Yeah, I know there's not sound. Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Computer America Show. We apologize for that. Yeah, it was working before the show, but yeah, now it seems to not be. So, everyone, I apologize for that. Imagine there was a fantastic intro, everyone, and hey, you're ready for some Computer America. So, today on the program, we will be doing computer and technology news, and that's brought to you by Computer America. Everyone, hey, how you doing? I hope that you're all doing well, you're all safe, and you are getting through whatever it is that you need to get through. I'm, of course, thinking mainly of Hurricane Ida, which has been ravaging the the southern coast of the U.S. And we hope that everyone out there is safe. Spending a lot of my childhood and a lot of my life in South Florida. Hurricanes are a very common thing, but no two hurricanes are the same. So we hope that you are safe, you are well, and you are, you have prepared the best you can, and it's now just really a waiting game. So everyone, again, we hope that you're doing well. So today on the show, as I said before, computer and technology news, and we have a lot of stories. The primary one, as you may have heard already, is, one of the big stories of the day is the fact that China is limiting the amount of game time that kids can kind of have. And here in the United States, where babies nowadays pretty much grow up with a tablet in their hand. I know that, obviously, 6-month-olds aren't really playing video games as much as they are kind of watching videos and things like that. But, life in front of a screen is a constant daily thing for a lot of kids. And to hear what China is doing is a, very, very counter. But hey, whatever the Chinese government says is kind of what the Chinese people do. It's going to be a very interesting, kind of conversation going on here. So everyone, sit back, relax as we get things started here. So, but before we do, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, past shows, future shows, everything you need to know about the program, as well as, the podcast. If you can't catch us live on IRN, then you can, of course, catch us on the podcast wherever podcasts are heard. We should be right there. Now, everyone, I think with that being said, also follow us on social media. That's the best place to go to find out what's going on and when we go live. And yeah, everyone, I hope you're just doing well. So let's go ahead and get started with computer and technology news. Let's hope this works. And no, looks like it just caused the whole thing to crash. Yeah, the sound system is not doing very well today. I don't know what is up with this thing. Maybe if we just restart the whole thing yet again. But everyone, let's see. So let's do that, and yeah, does not work. Perfect. I don't know why none of that is working. I'm gonna have to troubleshoot that. So to avoid troubleshooting that on the air, let's go ahead and jump right into computer and technology news. Now, I think that for our first story, again, we'll do this whole China thing, and yeah, this has been mentioned on many different publications. But yeah, it's really a big deal, with the rise of things like esports and, of course, just video games being a global, really kind of economy and just a very growing form of entertainment, especially when it comes to younger audiences. This follows a number of steps taken by Beijing. And if you aren't up to date on all of your Chinese news, which I would be really shocked if all of you weren't completely on the up and up with what's happening in China, it has to do with, I think they recently reclassified video games as like digital opioids or something like that. They don't really recognize video game addiction, but they do recognize all of the negatives that happened with, all the negatives that come with video games and how much time children are playing games. Now, they have kind of ramped up their response. At first, it was Chinese gaming platforms like Tencent and NetEase and, a number implementing restrictions onto their player base, that if you're under a certain age, then you can only play for a certain amount of time after school. They reclassified them as digital opioids. You could only play for a certain amount of time. You couldn't spend any more money on it. And now this is, I think, the culmination. I don't know what the next step is other than a full ban on video games when it comes to anyone under 18, which, think about video games. I mean, you traditionally think about, kind of kids, teenagers, your 12, 13, 14-year-olds who sit around playing Fortnite. Like, that is the image that comes to mind when you think of video games. It's, it's kind of a kid's thing. Luckily, it's also kind of grown out from that. And it's, not even, I play video games. I know lots of other grown adults and mostly grown adults that play video games. It's not always that image, but clearly limiting kids' playtime to 3 hours a week, by the way. That is, really what it's about. And it's 3 hours a week, and it's 1 hour a day for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And if you're lucky, there's a public holiday, you can play then too. But on school nights, no such luck. And if you're under 18, you have to, find some other way to get around it. Although, I'm sure that this is not the hardest thing to get around, but it is probably one of those things that to get around, you have to jump through some hoops. So, and obviously Ford in the chat room is, kind of voicing what everyone out there is thinking. Here in America, if our government tried to tell us you can only do X thing X amount of time, you can only play video games 1 hour, 3 hours a week, you can only eat healthy fruits and vegetables, if you can only have fast food once a month, you can only you have to get 3 hours of exercise a day, you have to drink 10 ounces of water. No, here in America, a lot of what is, kind of best practice is highly recommended. There are very few things that are just straight from the top legislated. And those are, kind of universally seen as good things, like seatbelts. There's not much that is strictly regulated that you have to follow the rules when it comes to recommendations. In China, though, goes differently, and it's almost like I heard someone explain it to me that it's almost like the not to use the word boomer, but it's kind of an older generation looking at the next generation of kids and going, well, video games are not good, like ignoring any kind of study, science, any kind of ignoring any kind of science or making up factoids and reacting very emotionally, saying that, these kids, they love video games. They love it so much. That can't be good for them. We're going to legislate it. As opposed to looking at, kind of a lot of the data points out there, which we've seen, kind of go back and forth, but a lot of them say that playing video games enhances creativity, improves hand-eye coordination, situational awareness. It allows for more well-adjusted kids because they get to act out different, kind of fantasies in a safe place. They also get to see perspective on, many characters from many different angles, much the way that reading books and, and to a lesser extent, watching movies and TV can do the same thing. Clearly, too much video gaming is probably a bad thing, and that has to go with sedentary lifestyle, that has to go with, lack of social interaction during your formative years, and of course, and of course, like Ford said, I don't know many parents out there that wouldn't recommend limiting video game or screen time for younger kids to a certain amount, and up to the parent. Maybe some parents say that 3 hours a day is plenty. Anything more is excessive. Maybe 1 hour a day is probably excessive, but yeah, the Chinese government up on high just handed down this order that said children under the age of 18 will now be restricted to 1 hour of gaming from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and on public holidays, saying that that's a change from the previous limit of 1.5 hours of online gaming on most days. Gaming companies must restrict online gameplay outside of those hours and must have a real name verification system in place to ensure the new rules are enforced. Essentially, another funny point that I heard someone else make was there's going to be a lot more 40 to 60-year-olds logging on to play video games randomly. Like, if you can't register for online games using your name and because you're too young and you can't play, well, yeah, just take someone else's name, or of course, use gaming services from South Korea or other countries. Kids will find a way around this. I remember being in school and there would be firewalls on everything. And of course, it was a game of, kind of cat and mouse, where some kid would come in with a new proxy site, and everyone would use it for the day. The IT people would behind the scenes would see everyone using the same kind of proxy service, and they'd block it, and then the next day another kid would come in with a different one that worked. And yeah, kids are creative. They're problem solvers, and I feel like this is going to be much the same way. No matter what restriction you put on, it's almost seen as like a challenge to some kids to be able to get around this. So I don't know how they can strictly legislate it. Obviously, there are going to be penalties, fines, and fees if they are found out, but how heavily they're going to actually enforce this is going to be kind of yet to see. And of course, and being able to borrow the device. I will say that another strange thing here is that they are limiting everyone under the age of 18, which, let's see, how many kids are there in China under the age of 18? How many people in China under 18? So there are, let's see, population distribution 2020. Obviously, this would have changed just a little bit. Let's say 0 to 15, there are about 18% of people in China are 15 years old. So, and this has a broken down from 0 to 15, 16 to 59. So 0 to 15, and so what's 18% of 1.3? 1.3 billion is about, let's see, what is that? 234 million. Yes, so 234 million kids in China, and probably more because, again, that's just 0 to 15. Let's say 250 million kids, about the population, just shy of the population of the entire United States. They're all going to probably play video games for 3 hours a week. They're all going to log on to the same services. You can imagine what that's going to do to authentication services, not being able to spread that out, and just suddenly a swarm of people and login attempts and, trying to play things. I mean, I don't know how, technologically they're going to accomplish such a feat. And then even beyond that, how, if anything, they might be trying to just straight up deter kids from playing video games as opposed to trying to limit them, because how good can you be at video games if you only do it 3 hours a week? I mean, even when you try to learn an instrument, they have you kind of practice that, 10 hours a week or something like that. When you try to learn a new skill, you try to do it as often as possible. They're not going to be good at video games, and the types of video games that they're going to be able to play only 3 hours a week is going to be very, very limited. Video games are meant to be played for, 20, 40 hours for single player games and, kind of role-playing games, story games. And then beyond that, it's, online games, you can have hundreds or thousands of hours played. Is that particularly healthy? Probably not. But it's kind of how video games are meant to, are made. Video games are made to be played often, and they are meant to bring people back time and time again. Maybe that's the point, raising a generation of hackers. Yeah, this will definitely make kids think critically how to get around this, but it could also have the opposite effect, and it could completely route an industry of video games away from, the next generation of kids. And what about the kids that are, let's say you're 17 and you've been playing video games for, your whole life essentially. And, obviously lately it's been getting less and less. And now you have 3 hours a day. I mean, this kind of ban would never happen in the United States. I personally don't feel like it should ever happen in the United States, but clearly someone thinks that limiting spiritual opium, quote unquote, which is what they are calling video games nowadays over there, is very aggressive, and probably the most aggressive move we've seen from Beijing. They say that they'll also work with parents and schools to help combat gaming addiction amongst Chinese youth. The new rules issued today come a month after an article published by state media described online games as spiritual opium. Although the phrase was later removed, the tone of the article, especially in hindsight, left little doubt about the state of intervention was inevitable. So my bigger take on all of this is that online gaming leads to cross-pollination with a lot of other ideas. And regardless of what you think about China, they definitely do control the flow of information in and out to its own population. Hence, the Great Firewall of China, certain news sites banned. I'm sure that Computer America, by and large, is probably banned in China for everything that we've said. If you're trying to run thought police on the next generation of kids, online gaming in particular could have them speaking with people who are outside of those limitations, and they could get access to information that they're not supposed to get access to. Obviously, Tencent in particular has been taking steps to kind of not quarantine, but keep Chinese players only on Chinese servers. But yeah, I'm sure that this is one part fixing the spiritual opium kind of epidemic that they're seeing amongst their younger children. And I'm sure that it's part controlling information and what people can do with their lives. I'm sure that one is not an unfortunate side effect of the other. It's definitely intended, and I don't know how well it's going to go over. I don't think that, if China's a powder keg by any means, I've seen no indication that that's the case, but this would not be a spark that causes a revolution or anything like that, take away the video games. It is going to irk a lot of people over there because, again, this affects, almost 300 million people, 300 million kids over in China. That's a lot of people. And what their reaction is going to be, who knows? We'll definitely see what, kind of what can become of that. Trying to think of, I had one more point I wanted to make, but still, I think that's about where we kind of have to leave it there now. And yeah, 3 hours of video games online per week, and it could be more if there is a national holiday. We'll have to wait and see if that pays off. Now, over the next 10 years, do I think that, people are better than others for playing video games? Like, this person plays video games and this person doesn't. Therefore, the person who doesn't play video games is not as good at certain tasks? No, absolutely not. You can develop those skills in so many ways. Video games have positives. They also obviously have negatives, but doesn't need to be regulated and restricted to this level. I've never heard a single person recommend that, outside of China, obviously. It's very aggressive, and I'm curious what that's going to do from that generation. I just remember my other thought. Esports are getting to be a more popular thing around the world, and you have global championships. Think of like the League of Legends, think of League of Legends, think of Call of Duty, Fortnite, whatever. Lots and lots of competitions happen from different regions all over the world, and now, well, a lot of the best talent in those regions are 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. That's just not going to happen in China anymore. You can't get competitively good at a game if you are under 18 because you just don't have the hours to play. You don't have the 10 hours a day to grind like other people do in South Korea, in Europe, in America. Yeah, it completely wipes out that entire segment of players in China on the competitive scene, which also makes sense why recently the League of Legends tournament was moved from China to to Europe so quickly. It's unfortunate, but hey, I am curious what is going to happen from that. So there you go. Who knows? Who knows what can actually come of that? Okay, story number 1. Story number 2. Let's go ahead and talk about a couple of these. How about a rumor? So that was fact. That's actually happening in China. How about a rumor? And this time for Apple and iPhones, which this is actually super cool if this turns out to be true. Rumor hints that the next iPhone might boast satellite communication. Now, that does not mean that Starlink is going to be available on your next iPhone, but what that could mean is that in extreme cases, you could have access to emergency services if you are, I'm sure as many of Computer America listeners do, if you're hiking the Andes, if you are traversing Antarctica, if you are scaling Mount Everest, if you happen to be somewhere that there is definitely no cell service, well, this might be a lifesaver. Obviously, get your calls and messages to the appropriate people. And that is a very cool, safety feature of last resort. This is from John Finkus and Engadget, saying that you might not have to wait too long for an iPhone with satellite communication built in. This according to 9to5Mac, and they mentioned that the next iPhone will include support for low Earth orbit satellite calls and messages. You could get in touch on a remote camping trip without any cell service and without buying a separate satellite communicator. Pretty nifty. The modern iPhone would supposedly use a modified version of Qualcomm's X60 modem to talk to satellites. It's not certain if satellite support would be limited to certain apps, although we wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. And thinking along those lines, if it is restricted to certain apps, I would bet that those restricted apps would be the SMS messaging capabilities of iPhone and the call features of the iPhone. I can't imagine any other situation where you would want to clog up low Earth orbit satellites with, Angry Birds data transfer. So, yes, Starlink indeed. But yeah, they're saying that so mobile satellite service is often far slower than conventional cellular data, ruling out any of the internet-intensive apps people take for granted. So yeah, this is not going to be for video games or even web browsing. This is going to be for, extremely dire situations, essentially, because it is so slow. The latency is so high, you would not have any kind of enjoyable phone call or enjoyable service through a satellite. Now, the article also mentions that there is good reason to be skeptical. A Bloomberg rumor from 2019 had Apple developing satellite technology for the iPhone, but the team reportedly hoped to ship a product within 5 years. 2 years might be too early, assuming the leaks were accurate in the first place, which there have been inaccurate leaks. I'm sure that Apple tries to do that every so often, planting different leaks to different teams to try to see where the information is coming out of. But hey, if they have been reportedly working on this for a number of years, then it could be this year. Now, there are also logistical questions, such as the choice of service providers. Satellite service has historically been expensive, and it might be a tough sell even if you venture beyond cellular coverage. So, yeah, having the capability also does not mean that you would have access to it. You would have to pay for it. Many expect Apple to launch the new iPhone lineup in September. It's not certain if this would be limited to the Pro models or reach the entire iPhone range. And the reason I'm sure that they're thinking it might be limited to the Pro model would be because of the larger size of the phones. And putting a whole nother modem into the phone, well, obviously, iPhones are I say this not ironically. They really are a model of modern engineering. Like, they are as compact, as over-engineered as you can ever hope to make a phone, and that's true. That's really true of most smartphones out there. Yeah, you would need the extra space to be able to fit that, and that would be exclusive to the Pro models. Now, if there is a satellite link up though, Apple might have a stronger hook for the new iPhone than the rumored display and camera upgrades. This would be the first mainstream smartphone offering connectivity virtually anywhere on the planet, and competitors might not match the feature for a while. Clearly, a lot of people don't do this often. This would be useful for situations where, someone is going to remote places often, people who travel a lot and, would be in areas where, like let's say you're flying over the Pacific or something like that, and the plane for whatever reason doesn't have internet access. Yeah, you could still get, text messages out or things like that. But hey, let's face it, a lot of iPhone users are in city settings. They're in urban settings, and they're going to have access to, hopefully, 5G here soon, if not 4G and LTE. This is not going to be for everyone. And the only other situation I can honestly think of is, well, we opened the show with it, wishing everyone well with Hurricane Ida. But if cell towers are knocked down, if power's knocked out, if you don't have cell service due to natural disaster, then yeah, this would be a really nice last resort option to be able to reach family, friends, message people, let them know you're okay, or contact emergency services. But it would not be a cheap way to do that. Honestly, might be easier to just, a lot cheaper to just kind of yell and hope for the best. But there you go. The new iPhone could possibly have satellite internet. That'd be very cool if it turned out to be true. I think that maybe they got their hands on a prototype, or maybe they got the leaks on a prototype, because the way a lot of these leaks happen, for those who don't know, is that obviously Apple has to order a ton of parts if they're going to make the next generation of iPhone. If you're going to sell 50 million phones, you have to order 50 million parts. And that's really where the leaks happen, is that, someone along the provider says, oh, Apple just placed an order, or at least someone just placed an order for 50 million modems for, kind of satellite communication. That's where the leak would come from. Is it confirmed? Not yet. Is it likely? Sounds like it. So take it with a grain of salt, but I would be very interested if they actually decided to do that. Okay. All right. We have a couple of stories here about the ability for tech companies to kind of control what it is that really everyone does. And I'm not saying this because, well, I'm not saying this because I think this was a bad thing explicitly, but it does show the power that Amazon has. And we've, not really had this conversation before, because when it came to politics, obviously we tried to avoid things like that. But this has happened with deplatforming of other voices, viewpoints, and people. Now it's happening yet again, but to a much less to a much less desirable group of people. And this is, well, about ISIS. Amazon disables ISIS propaganda website using Amazon Web Services to host content. So, to be fair, and this is something that, the United States government is putting more and more onto Google, onto Apple, onto Amazon, and Microsoft. This has a lot of similarities with the recent kind of scanning feature that Apple had been talking about for child sexual abuse images. The more data that we put onto the cloud and put onto Amazon services, use their services, use their devices, upload everything for free, deciding to use their services, the more data that these large tech companies are in charge of, the more the United States government is going to press them to make sure that no data that they don't agree with, be it inappropriate images, be it inappropriate ideas or ideology, they're going to have to start policing their data, because it is, at that point, their data. It's hosted on their servers. They are responsible for whatever content happens to be up there. And in this case, it has to do with ISIS. Obviously, everything that's happening with Afghanistan, don't get into that here, but this is happening here at home. They're saying that the group's media, the Islamic State's propaganda arm, used Amazon Web Services to host content promoting extremism, according to the Washington Post. And the group's media arm posted messages on the website in their own language, including one celebrating the recent bombing in Kabul that killed 170 people, which is probably the incident that got them attention there. Since Amazon's policy bars clients from using its service to incite violence or terror, great policy, by the way, the company pulled the website after the post alerted them to its existence. But think about that. This website has been up since, this website has been up, I want to say since like April. Yeah, it's been active since at least April, according to the article. And they say, so the website, Amazon disabled provided content for the app, which recently showed an image of the bomber wrapped in a suicide vest. It's currently password protected, not viewable, but it's been active since at least April, and that is according to domain records that the Post saw. Amazon spokesperson told the publication in a statement, following an investigation, we have disabled a website that was a link to the app as it was in violation of the acceptable use policy. Can't really deny that. That is certainly not what Amazon intended Amazon Web Services to be used for. The fact that it took them until April just goes to show, like so many things here on the internet, that, well, you can only police by exception. As soon as something gets enough attention, as soon as something gets enough eyeballs on it, that's when companies react to it, because let's face it, you just don't have the capability. People are miffed when YouTube tries to police all of YouTube using their their automated content policing system with AI and robots and that whole thing. And, obviously that's not 100% accurate, and you really have to pay attention to those that, it gets it wrong. But Amazon is a good example. Facebook is another good example. There is zero chance you're going to catch every abhorrent thing that happens on your service when you are as big as these companies. Too many eyeballs on it, and they decided to take it down. Back in January, it suspended Parler's Amazon Web Service hosting service after it was found multiple posts on the social network that clearly encouraged and incited violence. Obviously Parler sued Amazon, claiming antitrust violations, but the company said it sent the website several warnings about the violent post before the takedown. And ultimately, a judge shot down Parler's attempt to get the service restored, citing the dangers posed by inflammatory rhetoric, so on and so forth. So essentially, don't incite violence, and Amazon will, kind of keep you up at that point. So, Parler was one of those that we kind of kept track of here on the show, but clearly, if Amazon, I'm sorry, if Parler has a problem with Amazon and antitrust, I am completely for that. Amazon is definitely too big. They are too powerful. They have too many resources that spread way too far. Yeah, there's probably definitely a case to be made there. But yeah, it's clearly what the article was talking about here with ISIS and propaganda and disabling it follows in line with their decisions that they have made earlier. So they mentioned. So an Amazon Web Services spokesperson stressed to Engadget that it was only the website running on Amazon Web Services, not the app itself, and said that the company staff act quickly whenever there's a violation of the acceptable use policy. They mentioned that the app referenced by the Washington Post is not running on Amazon Web Services. However, following an investigation, we have disabled a website that was linked to the app as it was in violation of the acceptable use policy. This prohibits the use of services to threaten, incite, promote, blah blah blah, terrorism and serious harm. When we receive reports of potential violations of our user policy, we act quickly to investigate and take down the disabled prohibited content. So that's about the summation of it. They wanted to. So I guess ISIS wanted to use Amazon Web Services to essentially be the back end for their app that they then distributed using other means, probably sideloading and or I can only guess the Android App Store. And the data that the app was pulling from a website that was hosting content on Amazon Web Services. So it's not like, everyone was accessing Amazon to get their latest in ISIS propaganda, but yeah, they were being used as a tool to promote that propaganda in an app that was not under their control. So, yep, it's not the most twisted, convoluted chain of events, but clearly Amazon was involved and they tried to act as quickly as possible. So there you go. It's a standard move. I can't say a good move because, again, it was only taken down after it was brought to their attention, but a standard move by Amazon. So there you go. Okay, there's that one. Let's talk about a little bit more rumors. And this one's about PayPal. There's an app that has been taking the financial services sector by storm, and it's called Robinhood. If you've never heard of it, it essentially allows people with very little knowledge of the inner workings of investing, stock brokerage, trading on margin, things that would normally be reserved to a more experienced trader, and it gives everyone the keys to the castle. Now, not everything Robinhood does is exactly how a large investment firm would do it, but it does get your foot in the door and it does give you access to tools that you had never had before. And, its subscription numbers really show that people took a liking to it. It was low fee. It did not take a lot of money to get started, and a lot of people jumped on to access tools that they never had access to before. Hey, the power of technology. It's a great thing. Led to the surge of consumer investors. Well, check this one out. PayPal may offer a stock trading platform in the US, and that could obviously be a direct response to Robinhood. So PayPal is exploring the idea of allowing its users to trade individual stocks. The company recently hired TradeKing co-founder Richard Hagan to head up the new unit at the company called Invest at PayPal. Leading PayPal's effort to explore opportunities in the consumer investment business, Hagan said of his new job on his LinkedIn profile, the outlet reports PayPal has also had discussions with potential brokerage partners. Because, I can't get too much into the finances because I'm not the most well versed when it comes to the world of finances. But yeah, you need someone to actually execute, receive the orders, execute the orders. There's a lot of behind the scenes that needs to happen to make trading happen. And, they might not want to follow exactly in Robinhood's footsteps, because Robinhood does things like batch trading, as I understand it, which means that, you can put in your trade, but it might not go through until a certain threshold of trades go through, to kind of limit the number of transactions that happen overall, and they get batched together into larger transactions. That can lead to delayed time, that can lead to loss of money. There's definitely improvements to the system that can be made, and I'm sure that PayPal would want to do this as faithfully and accurately as possible. So there you go. They said that moving into retail trading wouldn't be out of character for PayPal. The company has spent much of the last year expanding into cryptocurrency. Last October, PayPal announced it would let US users buy, sell, and hold Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin. PayPal CEO Dan Schulman also recently told investors that the company could partner with different financial institutions to expand the number of services it offers, including investment capabilities as one possibility. So there you go. It's retail trading is definitely on PayPal's radar. A PayPal spokesperson declined to comment on the report. Essentially, they're not ready to announce anything yet, but they're exploring it. They're saying that should PayPal decide to offer stock trading, it may take some time before it's available to US users. CNBC reports PayPal is unlikely to roll out the service this year, and if the company decides it wants to operate as its own brokerage firm, it would need approval from FINRA. That's a process that could take more than 8 months. Essentially, partnering with an existing brokerage firm, hugely important, because you wouldn't have to go through as many regulations. You have someone else handling all the back end, and finances are heavily regulated. Some people would argue against the retail consumer, but still, it is heavily regulated, and having a partner in the industry would clear up a lot of red tape. If PayPal wanted to get into this themselves, thanks to the financial crisis of 2008, they would have to, I'm sure, have a lot of cash on hand, a lot more cash on hand to be able to back up the trades that they would be trying to make on behalf of their customers. There's a lot to think about, is what I'm trying to say. PayPal would have to really think that this is a possible moneymaker and draw to their app. And of course, the other issue, which is, when PayPal has issue with certain accounts, when they think that people are stealing money, they're using PayPal for nefarious schemes or whatever, PayPal has the ability, because they're not strictly a bank, they're more just a payment system, they can lock an account, they can shut it down, and, kind of wait and see where the pieces fall, do a full-fledged investigation, and then release your money if you feel like it. I've had experiences with PayPal on both sides, buying and selling, where I have been taken advantage of, where, people can request a refund and PayPal just rips it right out of your account and asks questions after the fact. And then, of course, the other side where, as the buyer, the seller says that they weren't happy with the transaction, they get to pull the money back, and as the buyer, you seem like you don't have many protections either. PayPal can't do that. If they want people to move money into PayPal, use them as an investment, strategy, and then of course have even more money on hand, on tap. They're going to have to be a lot less trigger happy with their closing and banning accounts. Before people do just, hide it in a jar in the backyard or keep it under their mattress. So, but PayPal is obviously exploring it. I'm sure that the huge success, and I would definitely say that Robinhood is a huge success. Given the huge success of Robinhood, they would be very interested in playing, playing the same game. So there you go. wish them the best of luck. It's never a bad thing to give consumers more tools and more services to, be able to utilize those tools. Very, very great to see. Okay, let's see. So there's that one. How about, okay, this is the other one. I was less miffed at this story. It has to do with Microsoft, Windows 11, and the security updates, and the fact that, we talked about this with Mike Cermak and other people, why Windows had, and Nathan Evans, there we go, why Microsoft had such an aggressive cutoff when it came to the supported systems with Windows 11. And, a big part of that were the vulnerabilities in Intel architecture. Due to the way that they were made, CPUs before like 2017 or something like that all have an innate flaw that you cannot fix. It is hardware specific. It's not that dangerous because, they would have to have your computer and you'd have to have the proper know-how and software to be able to get the data off of the CPU. But due to the fact that every known CPU before a certain date has this innate, you can't change it no matter what you do with software. All of these things are hardware specifically not safe. Microsoft is really clamping down on what is supported. And so you get an article like this where Microsoft might not deliver Windows 11 updates to PCs with old CPUs, i.e. unprotected CPUs. Now, this is again from John Fingus and Engadget. Microsoft might let you install Windows 11 on PCs with older processors, but that doesn't mean you'll get the full experience you'd find on newer machines. According to what Microsoft told The Verge, that PCs with unsupported CPUs aren't entitled to get Windows 11 updates and might not even get driver or security upgrades. You may have to get more recent hardware just to keep your system secure. Hey, stuff like this is why Linux will always have a place. So obviously Engadget asked the company if it can comment further, although it declined to elaborate when The Verge asked for more details. It previously said it would let people install Windows 11 ISOs on older CPUs to help businesses test the new platform. This wouldn't be this obviously would not be complete. Let me try that again. This wouldn't be a completely unexpected move. There we go. Microsoft could get into legal trouble if it offers updates to unsupported hardware. It might not want to risk bricking your PC with a patch or leading you to believe you're guaranteed technical support. This approach lets the company court enthusiasts without widening its compatibility and introducing other headaches. Microsoft has been trying ever since Windows 10 to get everyone onto the same operating system, the same browser, the same set of software. Because I'm sure that, it's 2010s were heavily fraught with people still using Windows 2000, Windows XP, Windows, very small amount of Windows Vista, Windows 7, a dozen different versions of Internet Explorer and Chrome. Too many teams, too many systems to keep up and make sure that they all interact and play nicely. Microsoft is trying to get everyone as consistent across the board as they possibly can. They mentioned that you'll still get an inferior take on Windows 11, and it's evident Microsoft's core message remains intact. The company wants you using a relatively recent computer with Windows 11, even if that means having to wait until you can justify a PC upgrade. So, by and large, it seems like if you want Windows 11, either upgrade or don't upgrade and keep the computer that you have. That seems to be very sound advice. Microsoft, I think, is still required to do like 2 more years of security updates for Windows 10. You're not in any kind of rush, but yeah, if you want the most out of Windows 11, it's going to have to be on a computer. I believe the cutoff was like pre-2017. It doesn't support stuff like that. And of course, Microsoft can send me money to upgrade. Yeah, they, like I said, stuff like this is why Linux will always have a place in the community. Companies want you using the latest and greatest. They want you using hardware that is compatible with the newest features that they kind of develop. This move, along with a dozen other moves over the past couple of years, really signals to me that Microsoft is not about, at least anymore, Microsoft is not about compatibility or working with every machine, making sure that every machine out there is a Windows machine. No, they are get on board, get something kind of recent, the past 5 years, and yeah, don't fall behind. Don't forget your security updates. So, and by the way, thank you for 2025 for Windows 10 security updates after we were told for the life of the computer. Yeah, and we were also told that Windows 10 would be the last operating system that Microsoft ever put out. Windows 10 was supposed to be an iterative process where Microsoft would just build and build and build on Windows 10. But hey, we all knew that wasn't the truth because just from a marketing standpoint, they weren't going to do that. So, yeah, there you go. And will work with a Mac only if you have Parallels. So, everyone, there you go. Windows 11, they're really holding tight to that idea that you need a modern-ish computer to run this kind of thing. So, pay attention to that. Okay. That was story number, 5? Story number 6. Let's go ahead and continue on here. This story caught my attention, although I think it was not from Samsung, though now Samsung is being accused of the exact same thing. I think that was Seagate. I think it was Seagate, but yeah. Samsung seemingly caught swapping components in its 970 Evo Plus SSDs, which I honestly think is, I either have a 970 or a 960. This might be mine. That's not good. Okay. Although, to be honest, I've had no problem with these, so who knows. They said that Samsung seemingly caught swapping components in its 970 Evo Plus SSDs. The Phoenix controller in Samsung's own product images isn't present on newer drives. So recently, major SSD vendors, Crucial and Western Digital. Okay, so I said Seagate. Turns out it was actually Western Digital and Crucial. So, a little correction there. Have been caught swapping out TLC NAND in their consumer SSDs for cheaper but much lower performance, lower endurance QLC NAND. So essentially, they were sending out units for review and testing, to the relevant organizations and people. And then when it came time to buy the one off the shelf, they were making it with inferior memory, as opposed to the ones that they sent out to the reviewers and the testers. That's called not good. That's very, very bad. Now, they say that Samsung appears to be joining them in the part-swapping corner of shame today, thanks to a Chinese YouTuber who documented a new version of the Samsung 970 Evo Plus using an inferior drive controller, which, if you're watching the video portion, you can see right here the two, and it looks like, let's see if I have this right. Yes, so the one on the left, the inferior drive looked faster than the original in most tests, but notice the very small 1 gigabyte test size. The test isn't escaping the SLC write cache. So essentially, yeah, it's supposedly it looks better, but in a lot of ways it's actually not. So You can see the performance line there, 1500. I'm sure that these are megabytes per second, as opposed to the newer ones, which are operating closer to 800 or 900 megabytes per second. Definitely not good. So, and we can also see the write cliff effect in a simple large file copy. When the write cache is exhausted, the new drive is far slower than the old, because the old one would hold at about 1.6 gigabytes per second, and the new one only holds at about 840 megabytes per second. Definitely not good. And yeah, it is definitely a bait and switch, a scam. So although the consumer-facing model of the drives did not change, it was the 970 Evo Plus last year, and it's still the 970 Evo Plus now. The manufacturer part number did. Unfortunately, the manufacturer part number isn't visible on the box the SSD comes in. As far as we've been able to determine, it's only shown on the small label on the drive itself, which obviously, if you wanted to test for that, well, you'd have to take it out of the packaging and look at it there in the store before you purchase it. Now, they mentioned that Ars Technica tested the 970 Evo Plus in March, clocking it at about 1600 megabits per second, which is standard for what they said. According to the newer test by the YouTuber, the new version only manages 800 megabits per second, half the performance of the original. And it seems likely that Samsung, like Western Digital, hoped that the part swap would go unnoticed because the end result was quote-unquote good enough. Under most light usage workloads, a user might never notice that the new part's lower performance because, like nearly all modern SSDs, the Evo Plus features an SLC write cache that's much faster than its main storage NAND. So essentially, if you're, just copying files and, pasting, saving like pictures and accessing, text documents and things like that, no issue whatsoever. The SLC, so like the cache would keep everything as fast as it would in the other ones. These tests, that you can see here on the screen, only really pop up when you're doing massive file transfers. And that's when you really have to start paying attention. So the older, higher performing drives have a Phoenix controller, and the newer, lower performing drives have one made by Elpis. Tom's Hardware points out that Samsung is already known to be facing controller shortages, with its own Texa controller factories having since been idle since February. I would say that much like the global chip shortage that is affecting so many industries, let's put it this way. Much like the scam that had been happening with Ford, Volkswagen, the emission scandal that happened in the EU, whenever you see multiple people in the same industry all doing the same thing, you can bet that, well, just about everyone is probably doing this, and Samsung is one of the biggest ones when it comes to this kind of memory. Although Samsung's part swap will likely have a lower direct customer impact than Western Digital or Crucial's, it's still disappointing that the company is pulling this without informing the public. Ultimately, we're talking about two versions of the same model with significantly different components and a drastic reduction in performance, with very little way for the consumer to spot the difference. And pandemic or no pandemic, that's not okay, as Ars Technica writes. Again, this is probably something of last resort, something that I'm sure that, given everything that Samsung knows now, they probably would not have preferred to do it that way. But they did, and yeah, it's, maybe there was no other way as they saw it to get these parts out the door. Using a cheaper, more readily available controller for the SSDs was more important than having shortages. But yeah, they did not clearly say that to their customers, and that's the real issue. So everyone, the issues with the issues with the sound system that we're having are still happening. Normally there will be music playing here for the next 30 seconds, but everyone, we're flat out of time. I want to thank you so much for tuning into Computer America. Until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into the program. Tune in tomorrow, where we should have, I think Nathan Evans should be on the program. Everyone, until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much. And everyone, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Catch you next time. Bye.